Thiong'o's Moving the Sender is a collection of essays that expands on his long standing argument that language, culture, and literature are deeply linked to power and freedom. He calls for a shift in how we understand the world, asking us to move away from the idea that Europe or the West should be the center of all knowledge, culture, and progress. He urges that we create a world where every culture, especially African and other non Western cultures, is equally valued and free to express itself. Colonialism did not just take land and resources from African countries, it also controlled their minds. The colonial system made African people think that their languages, traditions, and cultures were backward or inferior. Even after independence, many African nations continued to follow Western models in education, government, and culture. This meant that the center of thought, literature, and creativity stayed in Europe and African voices were pushed to the margins. Thiong'o calls this continued domination the legacy of colonialism. His solution is to move the center, to place African and other non Western cultures at the center of their own stories, languages, and histories. Culture is a battlefield. It is where people's identities and futures are shaped. In many African countries, education is still done in colonial languages like English or French, and African children learn more about European history than their own. This leads to a disconnect between people and their roots. Cultural freedom means the right to learn, write, and speak in one's own language, to value one's heritage, and to develop art and literature that speaks to the realities of one's people. In the opening chapters, he explains how the idea of the sender has always been controlled by powerful nations. The West sets the standards of civilization, literature, beauty, and science. Anything that comes from outside this Western sender is often seen as lesser. He challenges this idea by arguing that every culture has its own sender of value and meaning. We must build a world of many senders, a truly global society that respects all cultures equally. Thiong'o pushes for the use of African languages in schools, universities, literature, and media. Language is not just a way to communicate, but a carrier of culture and worldview. When African writers choose to write in English or French, they often lose connection with their communities. He urges writers to create in their mother tongues, allowing stories to grow from within their own cultural soils. The writer should not stand above the people but work alongside them, addressing real life struggles like poverty, oppression, and injustice. Literature must be relevant and rooted in people's everyday lives. It must also change power, whether that power comes from colonialism, dictatorship, or economic exploitation. A major part of the book discusses how imperialism works in the modern world. Thiong'o argues that even though many countries are politically independent, they are still culturally and economically controlled by powerful nations. This is what he calls neocolonialism. Western nations continue to dominate global media, education systems, and artistic standards. Filmmakers, African filmmakers, musicians, and writers often struggle to get attention unless they follow Western tastes. He challenges this unfair system and calls for cultural independence and creative freedom. He connects the African struggle to global movements. He speaks about the need for solidarity between oppressed people everywhere, whether in Africa, Latin America, Asia, or among black communities in the West. All of them face a world where the center of power tries to control their stories and silence their voices. He encourages unity in fighting against racism, capitalism, and cultural imperialism. He shares his own experiences as a writer, teacher, and activist. He describes how his work in local language theatre was shut down by the Kenyan government and how he was imprisoned for using Gigugu in his plays. These experiences taught him that cultural freedom is dangerous to those in power, but it is also necessary for true liberation. Despite the risks, he remains committed to writing in African languages and defending the right of all people to tell their own stories.